Ji-woo Park hummed to herself as she wandered through the hydroponic gardens of Olympus Station. The 10-year-old's small fingers traced the leaves of tomato plants, while her parents worked in the adjacent xenobiology lab. Mars's crimson landscape stretched beyond the dome's transparent walls, beautiful and desolate. 5 more minutes, then homework, she promised herself, skipping toward her favorite spot, a small alcove where Earth was visible as a bright blue dot in the distance. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness. When emergency power activated, 47 seconds later, Ji-woo was gone. Dr. Sung-ho Park dropped his tablet when the security alert sounded. His wife, Dr. Min-ji Park, was already running toward the garden section, her face pale with fear. "The system detected an unauthorized ship," shouted Security Chief Jun-ho Lee, rushing alongside them. "It appeared from nowhere. No approach trajectory, no warp signature. The footage showed only a brief shimmer near the garden dome, then nothing. Station sensors recorded a momentary energy spike, then silence. No ransom demands, no communication. Only Ji-woo's small notebook, pages fluttering in the artificial breeze." Within hours, Terran Confederation vessels swarmed the Mars orbit. Admiral Dae-ho Kim personally oversaw the investigation, his weathered face grim as he delivered the news to the Parks. "We found nothing, not even a particle trail to follow." Across the galaxy, in a chamber of living crystal and impossible geometry, 17 beings gathered around a projection of Ji-woo's sleeping form. "The human child has been successfully acquired," announced Representative Tlek, appendages waving in satisfaction. "Is this specimen truly necessary?" asked the Valeri delegate, membrane-covered eyes blinking rapidly. "They are barely tool-using primates." "Their technological advancement rate is unprecedented," countered another. 3 centuries from stone tools to rudimentary space travel. We must understand their capabilities." "And weaknesses," added Tlek. "Begin the testing sequence. Start with physical stress thresholds." As the council adjourned, a junior science officer approached the specimen chamber. The child slept peacefully, unaware of what awaited her. For a moment, the officer hesitated, something like doubt flickering across features never designed to express such emotions. "Specimen 7293, the officer logged into the system. "Testing begins at cycle dawn." In her drugged sleep, Ji-woo whispered for her parents, unheard among the stars. The Terran diplomatic vessel Horizon drifted in neutral space, ostensibly awaiting clearance to proceed to the Galactic Council's primary diplomatic hub. 6 months had passed since Ji-woo Park's disappearance, now just one of 17 children missing from frontier outposts. In the ship's communication bay, Lieutenant Do-hyun Kim's eyes burned from staring at screens for 20 consecutive hours. As the Horizon's cryptanalysis specialist, he had been tasked with monitoring Council communications for any unusual patterns. "Captain, I need you here immediately," he called through the ship's comm system, voice tight with urgency. Captain Yunju. Shin arrived moments later, her uniform crisp despite the late hour. "What have you found?" "I've isolated a recurring encryption pattern in their tertiary communication bands," Do-hyun explained, pointing to scrolling lines of code. "They're using quantum entanglement to mask it, but there's a slight resonance. Delay we can exploit." The captain leaned closer. "Can you decode it?" "Only fragments, but..." Do-hyun's fingers flew across the interface. "Look at this phrase that keeps appearing, human project." 3 days later, the Horizon reported engine malfunctions and requested emergency docking at Outpost Cree 7, a scientific station orbiting a gas giant in the Proxima sector. The request was reluctantly granted by the Council administrators. "Remember, we have exactly 4 hours before they realize our malfunction is fake," Captain Shin briefed her team. "Science Officer Minho and Lieutenant Do-hyun will access their data cores while we maintain diplomatic pleasantries." Minho Park and Do-hyun moved through the station's service corridors, guided by schematics they'd pieced together from public records. They found the primary data hub surprisingly unguarded. The Council never expected humans to penetrate this far into their territory. "I'm in," Minho whispered, connecting to the system. "Searching for human project now." What they found made Do-hyun physically ill. Video feeds showed Jiwoo Park and other children subjected to a methodical program of tests, exposure to extreme temperatures, radiation, various toxins, sensory deprivation, and psychological manipulation. They're systematically cataloging human physiological and psychological breaking points, Minho said, his voice hollow. Recording recovery rates, adaptation responses. Look at this, Do-Hyun pointed to another file. These are comparative analyses with other species. They're ranking us, testing our viability for something. A notice flashed on their screens, security protocols detecting the unauthorized access. Download what you can, Minho ordered, inserting a quantum storage device. We need proof. As alarms began to sound, they sprinted back toward the horizon. Behind them, the station's security forces mobilized. Captain Shin was already initiating emergency departure procedures when they arrived, breathing hard. "Did you find something?" she demanded. Do-Hyun nodded grimly, clutching the storage device. "We found Jiwoo and others, but we couldn't get to them. They're held in a secure wing across the station." The horizon broke away from the docking clamps. Without proper clearance, shields barely deflecting the station's hastily aimed defensive fire. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed," ordered Captain Shin, "and pray we make it back alive." In her quarters later, the captain reviewed the evidence, tears streaming down her face as she watched Jiwoo, thin and pale, but still alive, being subjected to tests designed to determine exactly how much a human child could endure before breaking. The horizon flew through the dark vastness of space, racing toward Earth with evidence that would change everything. 6 months of searching, 6 months of parents crying themselves to sleep, and now they knew the horrible truth. The ship landed at the Terran Confederation headquarters in Geneva. Captain Yoonju Shin walked down the ramp with Lieutenant Do-Hyun Kim and Science Officer Minho Park flanking her. Their faces were grim as they carried the data that would shake humanity to its core. "Madam President," Captain Shin said, bowing, slightly as she entered the Oval Conference Room, where the Terran leadership had gathered. "We found Jiwoo Park and 16 other missing children." She placed the quantum storage device on the table, the holographic display activated, projecting images that made several officials gasp or turn away. President Soo Jin-yoon watched with tears streaming down her face as footage showed 10-year-old Jiwoo screaming in pain, while alien scientists observed and took notes. "They're testing our limits," Do-Hyun explained, his voice hollow. "Cataloging. How much humans can endure, how quickly we adapt, how we break." "And who authorized this?" the defense minister asked, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. "The Galactic Council," Minho answered. "All 17 member species agreed to the program. They call it the Human Project." Within hours, the evidence spread across Earth and its colonies. Parents recognized their missing children. Citizens marched in the streets demanding action. Military personnel volunteered en masse for whatever mission would bring the children home. 3 days later, the Terran delegation arrived at the Galactic Council's central chamber. The massive crystal dome housed representatives from each of the 17 advanced species that governed known space. President Yoon stood tall, despite being dwarfed by many of the alien delegates. "We demand the immediate return of our children and full reparations for this violation of basic rights," the council leader, a towering being with iridescent scales, tilted its head. "The specimens are providing valuable scientific data. Your species' emotional attachment to its young is quaint." "They are not specimens," President Yoon said, her voice steady. "They are children." "Perhaps if you understood the greater context," another delegate chittered. "Your species is advancing at an unprecedented rate. We need to understand your capabilities." "And your weaknesses," added a third. "The safety of the galactic community must be considered." Admiral Daeho Kim stepped forward, tablet in hand. "We understand perfectly. You see us as lab rats, but there's something you should understand about humans. We protect our children." He activated the tablet. A hologram appeared, showing a sleek weapon unlike anything the Council had seen before. "This is a quantum displacement weapon," Admiral Kim explained. "It can bypass all known shield technology and deliver a payload directly to any target. We've placed 50 such weapons in orbit around key Council worlds. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Impossible, the Council leader declared. Your species lacks the technological advancement to create such weapons. Our estimates put you centuries away from this capability. President Yoon smiled thinly. Perhaps your estimates, like your ethics, are flawed. She stepped forward. You have 72 hours to return all human children unharmed. For every hour beyond that deadline, one of your military bases will cease to exist. We don't want war, we want our children back. This is primitive emotional blackmail, a delegate protested. The Council does not respond to threats from lesser species. Admiral Kim tapped his tablet again. On a distant moon housing the Council's largest shipyard, a flash of light appeared. When it faded, a crater stood where a command center had been. That was a demonstration, President Yoon said into the stunned silence. The next one won't be empty of personnel. 72 hours. As the human delegation turned to leave, the Council leader called out, "You realize this action makes you the very threat we sought to understand. You prove our concerns correct." President Yoon paused at the doorway. "No. What makes us dangerous isn't our weapons or our resilience. It's that we know the difference between right and wrong. And taking children from their families is wrong. You broke the most basic moral law in the universe. Now you'll learn why even the most advanced species should fear those who protect the innocent." The delegation departed, leaving the Council in disarray. Some delegates immediately called for military action. Others argued for compliance. A few quietly wondered if they had gravely misjudged these humans. Back on their ship, Admiral Kim looked troubled. "Do you think they'll give in?" "They'd better," President Yoon replied, watching the stars. "Because unlike them, we weren't bluffing." The clock struck 0 on humanity's ultimatum to the Galactic Council. Aboard the stealth carrier Valkyrie, Commander Tae-Woo Lee stood before 50 of Earth's most elite soldiers, men and women who had volunteered knowing they might never return. "Today we bring our children home," Tae-Woo said, his voice steady. His weathered face showed no fear, only determination. "The Council thinks we're primitive. They think we're weak. Today they learn otherwise." The soldiers nodded silently. Each wore next-generation stealth armor, matte black suits that bent light around them and masked thermal signatures. Equipment that shouldn't exist according to Council intelligence. On human technological capabilities, Lieutenant Hyejin Kang checked her gear one last time. Her fingers traced across the quantum scrambler tucked inside her combat vest. "This will work," she whispered to herself. After losing her own daughter 3 years ago to illness, she had sworn no other parent would endure such pain if she could. "Help it!" "Approaching drop point," announced the pilot. "Council defense grid is active, but their sensors aren't designed to detect our signatures." The Valkyrie slipped through space like a ghost, its revolutionary stealth systems making it virtually invisible to the Council's detection grid. The massive research station orbited a dead moon in a forgotten corner of space, exactly where you'd hide something you didn't want found. "Remember," Tae-Woo addressed his team one last time, "primary objective is recovering the children. Secondary is gathering intelligence on Council operations. Use lethal force only when necessary." The ship's belly opened, and 50 soldiers dropped into the void, propulsion packs guiding them toward the station's maintenance airlocks. Inside the station, a junior scientist named Krill was checking readings on specimen 7293, the human child they called Jiwoo Park. The girl had shown remarkable resilience, surviving tests that would have killed subjects from most species. Krill felt an unfamiliar emotion watching her sleep fitfully. Was it guilt? His species didn't typically experience such things. Warning lights suddenly flashed. The station's systems detected minor pressure fluctuations near the maintenance sectors, probably just another coolant leak, his supervisor dismissed, not looking up from her work. On the other side of the station, Sergeant Jun-Ho Park moved silently through the corridors, his team following close behind. Their helmet displays showed a 3-dimensional map of the facility, with a blinking dot indicating the children's likely location. "Central Labs, Level 5, he whispered into his comm. "Moving toward objective." Across the station, 3 other teams converged from different directions. Lieutenant Hyejin's group reached a security hub first. She placed her palm against the door's control panel, allowing the nanites in her glove to interface with the alien technology. The door slid open silently. Inside, two Council security officers turned in surprise. Before they could react, tranquilizer darts struck them both, sending them slumping to the floor. Security hub secured, Hyejin reported, sliding into the alien chair. Her fingers danced across unfamiliar controls as implants in her brain translated the symbols. I've accessed their internal systems, sending updated locations to your HUDs now. Commander Taewoo's team reached level 5 first. Through the reinforced viewing window, he saw rows of containment pods. Inside each, a child floated in suspension. Fluid, tubes and sensors attached to their small bodies. His jaw tightened at the sight of Jiwoo Park, her face peaceful in artificial sleep, while machines recorded her vital signs. We found them, he reported. 23 children confirmed, preparing for extraction, as his team worked to safely disconnect the children from the alien equipment. Sergeant Junho's group discovered something unexpected, a massive data center with holographic displays showing battle simulations. "Commander," he called through the comm, "you need to see this." The displays showed human soldiers fighting against a shadowy enemy, scenario after scenario of humans being sent into impossible combat situations, their casualty rates measured and recorded. They're not just studying us, Junho realized with horror. They're testing us as weapons. A scientist stumbled into the room, freezing at the sight of the human soldiers. Junho's translator picked up the alien's frightened words. "Please don't kill me. I'm just analyzing data. I didn't hurt any of the specimens." Junho grabbed the alien by its breathing apparatus. "They're not specimens, they're children. Talk. Now," the terrified scientist explained between gasps. The Council was secretly preparing for war against an enemy from beyond the galaxy's edge, an enemy they feared they couldn't defeat without help. Humans, it turned out, possessed unique qualities: adaptability, aggression when threatened, and resourcefulness that the Council species lacked. They needed cannon fodder for the coming conflict, while Commander Taewoo's team carefully removed the children from their pods. Lieutenant Hyejin worked furiously at the main computer core. She uploaded the Quantum Scrambler program, copying every file while simultaneously planting evidence that would expose which Council members had authorized the program. "Data secured," she reported, "but we've triggered silent alarms. Security. Forces converging on our position." The first shots hit as they began their retreat. Council security forces flooded the corridors, their weapons firing stun blasts designed to incapacitate without damaging valuable specimens. "Protective formation," Taewoo ordered as his soldiers formed a shield around the rescued children, now wrapped in thermal blankets and carried by the strongest team members. The journey back to the extraction point became a fighting retreat through narrow corridors. Hyejin's hackers scrambled station systems, plunging sections into darkness or venting atmosphere to clear paths. When they finally reached the maintenance airlocks where the Valkyrie waited, Council forces had them surrounded. "We have nowhere to run," Sergeant Junho said grimly, checking his weapon's charge. Commander Taewoo looked at the children, then at his brave soldiers. "We're not running," he tapped his communicator. "Valkyrie, execute Protocol Thunderbolt." The station shuddered as the Valkyrie's weapon systems activated, precisely targeting external defense systems and communication arrays. In the confusion, the human soldiers burst through the final checkpoint, shooting their way to freedom. As the Valkyrie pulled away from the crippled station, Lieutenant Hyejin sent one final transmission, the evidence package broadcasting to every species in Council space. The truth could no longer be hidden. In the ship's medical bay, Jiwoo Park opened her eyes for the first time in months. Through a haze of medication, she saw a face she recognized. "You came for me," she whispered. Commander Taewoo nodded, tears in his eyes. "We will always come for our own." The medical bay of the Terran Confederation flagship Invictus hummed with activity. Doctors moved quietly between beds, where 23 children slept peacefully for the first time in months. Their bodies were healing, though the psychological scars would take longer. Dr. Jin Young-han gently checked Jiwoo Park's vital signs. The 10-year-old girl slept deeply, her small hand clutching a stuffed rabbit her parents had brought. They sat beside her bed, refusing to leave even for a moment since her rescue 3 days ago. "How is she?" Sung-Ho Park asked, his voice hoarse from crying when they'd been reunited. "Her physical recovery is remarkable," Dr. Han replied. "Children are resilient, but what they experienced—" He shook his head. "We've assembled the best trauma specialists. We'll help them heal." Meanwhile, in the communications center of the Invictus, Admiral Min-jae Choi stood before a bank of screens. His weathered face showed no emotion as he gave the order that would change galactic history. "Release everything," he commanded. "Every file, every test recording, every name of every council member who approved this program. Let the galaxy see what they've done." Lieutenant Hyejin Kang, still wearing her combat uniform, nodded and pressed her palm against the transmitter. The data package she'd stolen from the research station began broadcasting across every frequency, to every species in council space. The reaction was swift and devastating. On Valyri Prime, the gentle, empathetic Valyri watched in horror as their representatives authorized painful tests on children. Their collective consciousness rippled with shame, and within hours, they'd withdrawn from the council and offered sanctuary to human refugees. The Tekkan Protectorate, renowned for their strict code of honor, immediately recalled their representatives and publicly executed those who had participated in what they called the abomination against the innocent. Within 2 days, 7 of the 17 council species had withdrawn their support. The mighty alliance that had stood for thousands of years began crumbling from within, but 5 species doubled down, declaring humans a dangerous threat that needed to be contained. They mobilized their fleets, preparing to attack Earth before humans could strike first. They didn't realize it was already too late. Admiral Min-jae stood on the bridge of the Invictus, watching tactical displays as 500 human ships emerged from jump points throughout Council space. These weren't the primitive vessels the Council believed humans possessed. These ships carried weapons that shouldn't exist for centuries in their estimation of human development. "All strike groups report ready, Admiral," his communications officer announced. Min-jae thought of the children in the medical bay below, of Ji-woo Park's tiny hand wrapped around a stuffed rabbit, of the millions of parents across Earth who had watched the recordings, their faces twisted with rage and grief. "Commence Operation Justice," he ordered. "Remember the parameters, military and government targets only. No civilian casualties if it can be avoided." Across 5 solar systems, human ships appeared without warning. Their quantum displacement, weapons bypassed defensive shields, striking with surgical precision. Military bases, government centers, weapons platforms, all vaporized in silent flashes of light. On the Council homeworld of Tlek, High Commander Zorn watched in disbelief as reports flooded in. Their most advanced defense systems had failed, completely. Their most secret military installations were destroyed, yet civilian centers remained untouched. "They could kill us all," his aide whispered, "but they're only targeting those responsible." "Impossible," Zorn hissed. "No species shows such restraint in war." But the evidence was clear. The humans weren't fighting for vengeance or conquest. They were delivering justice. After 72 hours of precise strikes, Admiral Min-jae received the transmission he'd been waiting for. A request for unconditional surrender from the 5 hostile council species. They agreed to stand trial before a galactic tribunal for crimes against sentient beings. 6 months later, in the newly constructed Hall of Unity, on neutral territory, representatives from 32 spacefaring species gathered to sign the Galactic Concordat. This new alliance would be built on principles of mutual respect, ethical treatment of all sentient beings, and protection of the innocent. At the center of the great circular chamber stood a young human girl. At 11 years old, Ji-woo Park's face still showed traces of her ordeal, but her eyes reflected strength beyond her years. The chamber fell silent as she stepped forward to address them. "My name is Ji-woo Park," she began, her voice clear and unwavering. "6 months ago I was taken from my home and treated as less than a person. I was hurt in ways no one should ever be hurt." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or sensory organs of each representative. "I could hate you for what happened, Many humans wanted to destroy those who hurt us, but that would make us the monsters they thought we were. The translator devices carried her words to each species in their own language, but many found the emotion in her voice needed no translation. Instead, we chose justice with mercy. We chose to build something better from the ashes of what was broken. Jiwoo gestured to the children from other species seated nearby, orphans and refugees from conflicts across the galaxy who were now being cared for by human families. You thought humans were dangerous because we're different. We are dangerous, but not in the way you feared. We're dangerous because we will always fight for the innocent. We're dangerous because we don't give up. We're dangerous because we can forgive even when we don't forget. She placed her small hand on the document that would unite the galaxy in a new era of cooperation. Today we start again, not as enemies, not as superiors and inferiors, but as equals with different gifts to share. As Jiwoo signed her name as the human witness to the Concordat, Admiral Min-jae Choi watched from the back of the chamber. He thought of the fire and death he had delivered to those who had hurt her. He thought of the worlds they had burned to save their children. And he prayed that no species would ever again mistake human compassion for weakness or human restraint for fear, because now they all knew the truth. You can threaten humans. You can fight humans. You might even defeat humans, but if you harm our children, we will burn your worlds. Retriclord can make mistakes. Please double-check Rispani.